The forest breathed mystery, every shadow hiding secrets that seemed to watch the soldier on his weary path. The thick air carried the scent of damp moss, reminding him that each step might reveal something long forgotten. The soldier marched in silence, yet inside him a storm of memories roared louder than any sound in the woods. His rifle weighed heavy like an anchor, but it was war's memories that truly bent his back and crushed his soul. The wind howled between the trees, turning branches into arms stretched out as if warning him of unseen dangers. The roots of the ground rose like barricades, as though the earth itself sought to block his path through the wild. His eyes scanned every corner, searching for something he wasn't sure he truly wanted to find or even confront. The tale of a hidden cabin echoed in his mind, like a distant beacon of hope shining faintly in endless shadows. They whispered it held a truth capable of changing the destiny of any man who dared to cross its threshold, and the soldier, weary of pain and loneliness, needed that truth more than breath itself, more than life itself. The woods seemed alive. Every sound was a whisper, every silence a roar that crushed his senses with weight. His boots sank deep into the mud, as if the forest wanted to claim him forever, binding him to its roots. His heart pounded not with fear, but with the strange sense of being guided by something greater than himself. The silence broke with the distant caw of crows, as if heralds were declaring the beginning of something vast. Each breath filled him with the bitter taste of doubt, yet carried the inevitability of destiny pressing forward. The morning chill clung to his skin, reminding him that even nature itself seemed to conspire against his journey. Then suddenly, silence shattered with the thunderous sound of hooves, echoing like drums across ancient trees. A wild horse appeared, its coat gleaming like bronze, its imposing presence commanding awe from the forest. The creature's eyes burned with an ancient fire, as though they carried the memories of ages lost to mankind. The soldier froze, not in fear, but in reverence, struck by the sensation of standing before something sacred. The horse showed no fear nor aggression, but watched him with a gaze that already seemed to know his purpose. The wind rippled its mane, and the forest itself seemed to fall silent in respect for the beast's arrival. The soldier knew the meeting was not chance but destiny, an invisible call greater than his deepest scars. Slowly he stepped forward, and the horse responded, leading him along a path concealed beneath endless trees. The forest parted before them, revealing hidden trails like gates opening into a realm of mystery and wonder. Every stride of the horse was certain, deliberate, as if it had known these paths since the dawn of time. The soldier followed without hesitation, as though some unseen hand had broken the chains within his spirit. There was no return now. The journey had begun. Fate awaited silently within the heart of the shadowed woods. The air grew heavier, saturated with secrets, as though the forest whispered in forgotten tongues of old. And there, veiled in mist upon the horizon, the promise of the cabin loomed like a ghost waiting to be revealed. The horse halted abruptly, ears spearing the air, as a low thunderous growl rolled through the trees like distant stormfire. The soldier steadied his breath, tasting metal on his tongue, while the forest seemed to shrink around a single dreadful sound. Between moss-slick trunks, a colossal shape unfolded, fur like wet night, jaws flowering into knives and breath burning cold. The bear's eyes were lanterns of hunger and pain, two primal suns that rose to cast the clearing into ancient lore. The horse stamped the earth, not in fear but warning, iron hooves declaring that this ground now answered to courage. The soldier lifted his rifle, but the stock trembled, his memories dragging him backward to battlefields he barely escaped. The bear advanced, muscles rippling like avalanche stone, each step a verdict, each snort a judge's gavel in darkness. Then the horse lunged sideways, blocking the path, a wall of living thunder that dared the predator to rewrite fate. The soldier shouted a broken prayer, half to the animal, half to the forest, hoping either would spare a little mercy. Claws flashed, raking bark as the bear swiped wide, splinters flying like sparks from a forge of ruthless winter. The horse reared, a tower of will against a mountain of rage, and the world snapped into frames of impossible clarity. In that frozen instant, The soldier saw courage made flesh, not trained nor commanded, but freely given like fire. He pivoted, dropped to one knee and aimed low, refusing the headshot that might doom the horse to friendly fire. The shot cracked the valley, ricocheting across mossy ribs of stone, and the bear stumbled, fury buckling into doubt. The horse drove forward, hooves drumming the mud, forcing space between death and the man who had lost his faith. Another growl ripped loose, darker than thunder, and the bear whirled, blood painting its fur like a warrior's mark. The horse sidestepped, swift as wind over water, shaping the chaos into rhythm the soldier's breath could follow. He chambered another round, whispering thanks to nameless saints and to the beast who chose him without a word. The second shot kissed the ground near the bear's paws, a warning bell, a boundary line scorched into the earth. The predator hesitated, intelligence flickering, as if weighing old hunger against the strange covenant before it. The horse snorted lightning, neck arched like a drawn bow, and the soldier felt the string pull taut inside his chest. He remembered the cabin, the rumor of truth, and realized destiny sometimes arrives with hooves instead of angels. The bear charged again, a brown comet of wrath, and the horse cut left, herding death away from the soldier's spine. A third shot sang, not to kill, but to carve escape, stitching a path through fern and shadow toward the hidden trail. The bear skidded, rage splashing into bewilderment, and the forest exhaled alder leaves quivering like startled birds. The horse planted itself between man and monster once more, living shield, living bridge, living oath sworn in breath. The soldier rose, boots sucking free of the mire, and felt the tremor of decision shaking loose his oldest ghosts. He backed toward the narrow cleft of trees the horse had chosen, a vein in the forest beating with second chances. The bear roared once, a cathedral bell of terror, then turned aside, claiming the clearing as a kingdom left unbroken. The horse tossed its head, eyes bright as dawn on steel, and nudged the soldier forward, deeper into the waiting green. The soldier stumbled into the narrow trail, heart galloping, while the horse pressed close, anchoring him to life's thread. Behind them, the bear's roar lingered, echoing like a curse across the forest, promising vengeance in another dawn. Moss dripped from leaning pines like banners of age, witnessing the fragile alliance forged between man and beast. The soldier's hands trembled as he reloaded, each metallic click a reminder that survival was always a fragile bargain. Yet in his chest something shifted. An ember reignited, sparked not by steel but by the living courage beside him. He glanced at the horse, muscles still coiled with storm, and knew this creature had not saved him by mere chance. It was as if the wilderness itself had appointed a guardian, an untamed spirit bound to his fractured destiny. The horse flicked its ears, listening to echoes unseen, guiding them as though the forest whispered directly to it. Every step carried weight, as if the soil itself judged their worthiness to reach the cabin whispered in myth. The soldier's memories clashed, battlefields, screams, fire, yet this silence felt heavier than war, as if history watched. Shadows stretched long, carving faces from trees, and in each shifting outline he saw enemies, allies, forgotten friends. The horse snorted, snapping him back, its gaze unshaken as if to say, "Follow me. The truth lies ahead, not behind." He obeyed, boots dragging, spirit torn between doubt and the magnetic pull of something larger than survival. The trail narrowed, branches clawing his shoulders, but the horse moved sure-footed, clearing a way he could not. Above, a hawk circled, wings slicing silence into ribbons, as though heaven itself was recording their fragile steps. Sweat trickled into his eyes, stinging, yet he dared not blink, afraid the path might vanish if he looked away. His breath rasped, heavy with questions. Why me? Why this horse? Why this forest? Why this truth? Why now? No answer came, only the creak of ancient wood ahead, like a door groaning in anticipation of its first confession. The soldier froze, every nerve alight as the horse halted too, nostrils flaring at the scent of something unfamiliar. Through the lattice of pines, he glimpsed it, dark roof cloaked in moss, chimney bent like a weary pilgrim. The cabin stood silent, a relic carved from forgotten centuries, waiting with patience older than the wars of men. He swallowed hard, throat dry, for this was no ordinary shelter. It radiated weight, a gravity of untold stories. The horse stamped once, as if to say, "This is the place," and the soldier felt both fear and awe collide within. His rifle hung limp at his side, suddenly meaningless against mysteries carved not of flesh, but of memory. Mist curled from the soil, weaving around the cabin like smoke from invisible fires that had never fully died. The forest hushed, even the wind pausing, as though all creation leaned closer to witness the moment of arrival. The soldier's heart thundered louder than any battlefield, for he knew that beyond this door waited revelation. He turned to the horse, whose eyes blazed like stars, and realized he was no longer alone, never had been. Together they approached man and beast, fragile and eternal, bound by fate's invisible thread to the unknown within. And as his hand reached for the cabin's weathered door, the world itself seemed to hold its breath in silence. His fingers brushed the door's splintered wood, rough with centuries, each ridge a scar etched by storms and silence. The cabin loomed before him like a sentinel, a monument not of stone or war, but of time itself, refusing to die. Every board groaned softly under the weight of history, as though whispering confessions only the brave could hear. The soldier drew a trembling breath, the scent of pine resin and earth mixing with the bitter taste of expectation. The horse stood beside him, muscles taut, eyes fierce, as though aware the door concealed more than just shelter. Mist seeped under the cracks, curling like ghostly fingers, reaching for his boots with promises of forgotten truths. He remembered tales of comrades who sought redemption, only to vanish into mysteries deeper than their own sins. The handle was cold, iron bitten by countless winters, and touching it felt like shaking hands with eternity itself. His pulse quickened, not with fear alone, but with the heavy recognition that fate demanded he step beyond this line. Shadows shifted within the seams of the cabin, alive with suggestion, like stories straining to burst into daylight. He glanced at the horse, seeking courage, and in those burning eyes he found steadiness more human than animal. The forest around them had hushed completely, even the wind holding its tongue, as destiny balanced on this hinge. Each second stretched long, bending reality, as if the universe itself wanted to savor the pause before revelation. He pressed the door slowly, the hinges crying out in agony, a wail of rust and memory echoing into the trees. Darkness spilled from the threshold, thick and tangible yet not empty, alive, dense with secrets unspoken. His boots crossed the wooden step, and the sound cracked the silence like the first stone dropped into still water. Inside, the air was cooler, touched by dust and smoke, layered with the weight of decades sealed in this tomb. Shapes hovered in corners, shards of furniture, broken glass, a chair toppled as if someone fled in desperate haste. A broken lantern dangled from a rafter, swaying gently though no wind touched it, as if unseen hands stirred it. The soldier swallowed hard, tasting iron, as though the very air of the cabin demanded a price for entrance. He whispered a name, though he knew not whose, a reflex of faith born from the hunger to not be utterly alone. The horse stepped closer to the door, hooves echoing softly, unwilling to abandon him even to the jaws of shadow. Their breaths mingled, one human, one wild, yet both trembling with the weight of truths locked beyond comprehension. He forced himself forward, each step heavier than the last, as if the floorboards tested his worth with every creak. A sudden crack sounded behind him, a branch snapping outside, reminding him that danger still prowled in the forest. He did not turn back. The bear could return, or worse, but the pull of the cabin outweighed even the threat of death. His eyes adjusted slowly, carving images from darkness, piecing together fragments of a story half erased by time. Carvings etched the walls, symbols old and foreign, spirals and runes glowing faintly as if inked with living fire. His skin prickled, hairs rising, for he knew he had crossed not just into a shelter but into something sacred. And at the center of the cabin, beneath the beam of pale light, lay a chest bound in iron, pulsing with silence. His hands trembled as he neared the chest, its iron bands pulsing faintly, as if alive with ancient restrained fire. The soldier knelt, brushing away dust thick as centuries, feeling history breathe against his fingertips like smoke. Strange markings carved the lid, spirals intertwining with symbols that seemed to shift under his weary gaze. The horse stamped its hoof, uneasy, eyes fixed not on the chest, but on the shadows pooling deep in the corners. A sudden chill wrapped around his spine, colder than any battlefield, as though unseen eyes measured his resolve. He whispered, "What truth waits here?" Though the silence answered only with the creak of beams bending overhead. His reflection wavered on the chest's iron, distorted, showing not the soldier he was but the man he feared becoming. The symbols glowed faintly, not with light, but with memory, an energy drawn from every life the cabin had witnessed. His breath quickened, each inhale scraping raw against his lungs, as if the very air rebelled against revelation. With shaking hands, he reached for the latch, its surface biting into his palm, like the teeth of destiny itself. The sound of metal lifting was thunderous, echoing through the cabin as though the walls themselves recoiled. Beneath the lid, a velvet darkness waited, heavier than stone, swallowing the lantern glow like a greedy tide. He peered closer and saw not objects but visions, flickers of faces, battles, and choices that were not his own. It was not treasure, nor weapon, but memory itself, a vessel of every soul who had crossed this hidden threshold. The soldier gasped, his body convulsing as images clawed into his mind, forcing him to see what they had seen. Children lost in storms, mothers clutching prayers, men broken by greed, all lives stitched into this chest's marrow. The horse whinnied sharply, a warning cry, its hooves striking the floor as if to sever the soldier from the vision. He tore his gaze away, collapsing to the ground, sweat pouring like rain, his heart a drum of unbearable weight. The chest snapped shut on its own, iron bands clanging like chains, sealing away the torrent of haunted memories. Gasping, he stared at it, knowing now that what it guarded was not for power, but for those desperate for truth. The cabin seemed to breathe around him, rafters creaking like sighs, as though pleased with his moment of survival. He wiped his brow, trembling, and realized that entering had cost him something he could never reclaim again. The horse stepped inside fully, nudging him gently, eyes steady, as though reminding him he was not forsaken. He gripped its mane, grounding himself, feeling warmth against his palm, where moments before there was only dread. Slowly his vision cleared, and the cabin returned to stillness, shadows settling like blankets upon ancient wood. But the soldier knew silence had changed. Now it carried weight, like a secret pressing against the edges of his mind. He rose unsteadily, legs weak, yet something inside him burned stronger, resolve tempered in the crucible of fear. The chest no longer called to him. Instead, it watched, a silent guardian of truths only half unveiled to his soul. He looked to the door, mist curling back in, and knew the forest awaited, hungering to weave him deeper into destiny. And with the horse at his side, he stepped back into the night, carrying a burden of visions that could not be undone. The soldier stepped back into the mist, chest heavy with visions, yet destiny had not finished shaping his trial. The horse tossed its head sharply, ears pricked, sensing the forest tremble with something far more primal than silence. A low growl rolled across the trees, deeper and older than thunder, as if the earth itself spoke through fangs. The bear had returned, wounds striping its flank, rage burning brighter than pain, hunger stronger than retreat. Its eyes locked onto the soldier, no longer predator alone but judge of a trespasser who had touched forbidden truth. The forest darkened, clouds swallowing the moon, shadows lengthening until even the cabin seemed to vanish in haze. The soldier's heart pounded with dread, but beneath it flickered resolve, tempered by the visions seared into his soul. The horse stepped forward, a wall of muscle and fire, refusing to yield, ready to carry the weight of both their fates. The bear's roar tore the night open, a sound that split marrow from bone, shaking branches and scattering unseen birds. The soldier raised his rifle, but his hands steadied differently now, not trembling from fear, but anchored by belief. He no longer aimed as a broken man, but as one who carried the voices of the past like armor forged in memory. The horse pawed the ground, breath steaming like smoke from a forge, every muscle coiled to defend its chosen human. The bear advanced, claws carving trenches in the soil, each step a drumbeat of judgment against the intruder's will. Lightning split the clouds above, a jagged blade of white fire illuminating the clearing in terrible clarity. The soldier shouted, not words but raw defiance, a roar that matched beast with man, fire with blood, destiny with will. His finger squeezed, the rifle cracked, sparks scattering, bullet singing through mist and striking the earth near. The bear staggered, fury exploding louder, yet it did not fall. It surged onward, a storm that could not be denied. The horse lunged, hooves flashing like meteors, forcing the beast to veer aside, breaking the rhythm of death's charge. The soldier moved with them, no longer separate but bound in a rhythm of survival shared with the untamed guardian. Each second stretched long, every heartbeat a frame of a story painted in lightning, shadow, and raw defiance. The bear swiped, claws missing by inches, air itself screaming as if even silence feared to stand in its path. The soldier dove, rolling across mud, vision blurring, yet rising with fire in his eyes, refusing surrender to fate. He shouted at the horse, though no command was needed, for the animal already knew, already fought with his heart. The cabin behind them pulsed faintly, as if alive, its walls glowing like a witness, recording this struggle eternal. The bear reared, colossal, towering above, a mountain of muscle and fury, blotting the stormlight from the sky. The soldier lifted his rifle again, but this time felt the horse's breath at his shoulder, steadying his hands. They stood as one man and beast, fragile yet unbroken, facing the raw embodiment of nature's cruelest test. Thunder rolled, rain beginning to fall, each drop striking the soil like drumming soldiers cheering from beyond. The bear roared again, but in that roar was doubt, as if even it recognized the power of unity before it. The soldier exhaled, trigger tightening, eyes fixed not on fear, but on destiny, ready for the storm to break. The bear lunged, claws slicing the stormlight, but the horse surged forward, a wall of fury that split the charge. The soldier fired, the shot tearing across the night, echoing like a hymn, as thunder crowned the clearing in fire. The bullet struck flesh, a bloom of red across dark fur, yet the beast roared louder, pain only sharpening its rage. Mud churned beneath hooves and paws, the forest trembling, as if the earth itself bent beneath their battle. The soldier fell to one knee, heart hammering, but his spirit stood taller, unbroken by the storm of violence. The horse wheeled, striking with hooves like hammers of gods, each blow shaking the monster's resolve for a heartbeat. Rain lashed down in torrents, baptizing man and beast as if heaven itself demanded witness to the clash below. The bear's eyes flared, a furnace of hate, but within its roar lingered hesitation, a crack in its endless fury. The soldier saw it, doubt in the predator's gaze, and pressed forward, rifle raised, voice echoing like command. "You will not take this night," he cried, words swallowed by storm, yet ringing through the marrow of the woods. The horse reared again, mane streaming like fire, defiance burning in its eyes brighter than the lightning above. The bear faltered, blood mixing with rain, and for the first time its strength wavered beneath relentless defiance. The soldier steadied his rifle once more, hands no longer trembling, purpose burning hotter than primal fear. He squeezed, the crack splitting darkness, the bullet flying true, a thread of steel guided by the horse's courage. The beast staggered back, massive frame collapsing into mud, breath ragged, eyes dimming like stars swallowed by dawn. Silence fell heavy, broken only by rain drumming the earth, washing blood and fury into streams of memory. The soldier lowered his weapon, chest heaving, vision blurred by tears and rain, heart roaring louder than thunder. The horse stood tall beside him, unyielding, every breath a monument to the unspoken covenant forged in fire. The bear groaned once, eyes softening, not with rage but with surrender, as if even death bowed to destiny's hand. Then it lay still, giant form melting into earth, returning to the soil as guardian, as warning, as sacrifice. The soldier collapsed to the mud, exhaustion wrapping around him, yet his soul blazed brighter than in all his wars. Lightning arced above, but this time it seemed to bless rather than judge, carving light upon the cabin's face. The forest exhaled deeply, wind moving like breath. releasing tension as though relieved by the outcome chosen. The soldier pressed his forehead to the horses, whispering thanks, a vow that bound their fates beyond this night. Mist rose again, curling through trees, carrying whispers of ancestors who had seen and sanctified this moment. He looked at the cabin, its dark windows glowing faintly, as though awakened by the sacrifice just witnessed. The door creaked open wider, without his touch, an invitation carved not by man but by forces older than memory. The soldier rose, legs trembling, guided not by fear, but by duty to step further into the truth awaiting inside. The horse followed without hesitation, shadow and light entwined, partners against the endless mysteries of the wild. And as they crossed the threshold once more, the storm faded, leaving silence heavy with the promise of revelation. The cabin's air shifted as he entered, no longer stale but vibrant, alive with unseen currents weaving through shadows. The soldier froze, for the silence was not empty, but full, brimming with voices that spoke without sound or tongue. Light spilled from cracks in the beams, not moonlight but a golden glow pulsing like veins of fire through the walls. The horse snorted, ears twitching, but instead of fear, its stance was calm, as though it had walked here before. The soldier's heart raced, yet his spirit steadied, sensing he stood not in ruin but within a cathedral of truth. Dust floated upward, defying gravity, shimmering like constellations reassembled, constellations that formed shifting faces. The walls hummed, vibrations thrumming like strings of an invisible instrument played by hands older than mankind. He turned in circles, every surface alive, carved symbols glowing brighter, spirals spinning with growing intensity. The chest pulsed again, though unopened, beating like a second heart that commanded the very rhythm of the cabin. The soldier gasped, not from terror alone, but from awe, for he knew he was standing inside memory made flesh. Visions erupted, fields of battle, rivers of blood, but also tender moments, mothers cradling children, lovers embraced. Each image struck him with force, as if history itself demanded he not only see, but carry the weight of remembrance. He staggered, clutching the wall, yet the light did not relent, carving deeper into him truths he had long denied. The horse pressed against him, steadying his body as though lending strength from a spirit untouched by despair. Voices rose, overlapping, not chaotic but harmonious, a chorus woven from centuries of pain, hope, and sacrifice. The soldier cried out, his voice breaking, but instead of rejection, the light enfolded him, burning yet tender. He saw the faces of comrades lost, their eyes calm, no longer twisted by war but radiant with peace eternal. One stepped forward from the vision, a captain he once followed, and whispered words he thought he'd never hear. "You are not lost," the voice said, though lips never moved. "You are chosen to bear what others could not." Tears blurred his sight, falling hot onto the floor, each drop glowing faintly before vanishing into the wood. The cabin itself groaned, beams stretching, ceiling rising, until it no longer felt like a room but an endless temple. The soldier dropped his rifle, metal clattering loud, the sound pitifully small against the hymn swelling around him. He fell to his knees, not from weakness but reverence, as if the only posture worthy here was surrender to wonder. The horse knelt too, lowering its head, a gesture not taught but born of instinct, acknowledging sacred ground. A brilliant shaft of light pierced the roof, illuminating the chest, sealing it as the axis of this revelation. The soldier crawled forward, drawn not by curiosity, but compulsion, every fiber knowing this was his destiny. The chest vibrated, iron rattling like chains longing to break, yet it did not open, as if waiting for permission. He stretched out a hand, hesitation trembling, but the voices grew softer, coaxing him like parents guiding a child. His fingertips brushed the lid, and the room exploded with radiance, a sunrise born inside, banishing all shadow. For a moment, the soldier ceased to be himself, and became every soul who had ever lived, breathed, and dreamed. Light poured through his veins, burning yet cleansing, as though centuries of wounds were being rewritten inside his flesh. He felt his scars dissolve, not erased but transformed, each one shining as a medal carved by suffering into wisdom. The horse's eyes glowed like molten amber, sharing the vision, its spirit woven into the same tapestry of truth. Around them, the cabin dissolved into stars, beams bending into galaxies, rafters unfolding into infinite constellations. He floated, weightless, no longer bound by war or grief, but held in a cradle woven from memory and timeless hope. Voices layered upon voices, ancestors and strangers, each singing fragments of truths humanity had long forgotten. He saw empires rise and fall, oceans swallow cities, and children laugh in meadows where sorrow could not dwell. Every image cut him and healed him, pain and joy stitched together into a single garment of unshakable truth. His chest heaved, tears unrelenting, but they no longer burned. They were rivers cleansing the ash from his soul. The horse neighed softly, echoing like a trumpet, as though declaring to the cosmos that man and beast stood united. The chest shone brighter, its iron glowing white-hot, and with a sudden burst it split open, revealing no treasure. Instead, within lay a mirror of pure light, not reflecting his body but his essence, raw and unguarded before eternity. He reached toward it, trembling, and when his hand touched, a surge of warmth poured into him like eternal fire. Images of his past, failures, betrayals, regrets, rose before him. But instead of shame, he felt forgiveness unfold. The cabin's walls sang, wood vibrating like strings of a harp, filling the air with chords that tasted like eternity. His captain's voice returned, woven through the harmony, saying, "The war is not your end, but the beginning of life." The soldier collapsed, overwhelmed, yet the horse stood steady, anchoring him in flesh while his soul soared higher. Light fused with darkness, sorrow with joy, war with peace, until all opposites melted into a single radiant truth. The soldier rose slowly, not by his own strength, but lifted by the unseen hands of those who had walked before. His wounds were gone, but their memory remained, transformed into maps, guiding him toward a destiny beyond survival. The chest closed softly, iron cooling, no longer threatening but resting as if content with what it had given. The visions faded, stars folding back into beams, until the cabin once again stood small, silent, and earthly. Yet he knew it was changed forever, as was he, for the truth once tasted cannot be buried again in mortal dust. The horse lowered its head to his shoulder, breath warm, a living reminder that he was never meant to walk alone. He whispered, voice cracked but sure, "I see now," words not to himself but to the chorus that had faded into silence. The air calmed, dust settling like feathers, as though the storm had passed, leaving peace in its fragile aftermath. He felt lighter, freer yet heavier with purpose, carrying the weight not as burden but as a torch against darkness. The cabin door swung open once more, mist drifting in, a silent summons that destiny still lay beyond these walls. The soldier met the horse's gaze, a silent pact sealed, and knew the world outside would never look the same again. Together, they stepped into the night, no longer lost souls, but chosen guardians of a truth that outlived the ages. The night air struck him differently now, crisp and electric, as though the forest itself had been rewoven in light. Every leaf glistened under the moon, shimmering with dew, not of rain, but of secrets released back into the world. The soldier inhaled deeply, the scent of pine richer, layered with something new like the breath of ancient fire. The horse walked beside him, no longer merely beast but companion, its eyes glowing with wisdom born of eternity. The forest no longer seemed hostile but watchful, as though it had shifted from predator to guardian of his path. He felt the weight of unseen gazes, not threatening but reverent, as if spirits followed, honoring his awakening. His boots pressed into mud that pulsed faintly, trails of light sparking with each step like footprints etched in stars. The soldier paused, gazing at his hands, once instruments of war, now radiant, trembling with power he could not name. He whispered to the horse, voice low, "We are changed," and in the creature's calm nod he found silent agreement. The wind rose, carrying not chill but warmth, a caress that wrapped around them like the blessing of unseen kin. Trees swayed in unison, not chaotic but rhythmic, as though the entire forest breathed to the cadence of their steps. The soldier's chest swelled with resolve, He no longer walked for himself, but for those whose voices lived within. Yet beneath the awe, tension lingered. He knew revelation was not gift alone, but burden carried into a hostile world. The horse's ears flicked sharply, catching whispers in the undergrowth, a reminder that danger had not vanished. Shadows shifted near the tree line, forms low and prowling, predators drawn to the strange energy pulsing in the night. The soldier lifted his rifle, not from fear, but instinct, though he knew bullets alone could not guard truth eternal. A pair of glowing eyes blinked from the dark, then another until the forest seemed alive with watchers all around. Wolves emerged, their bodies lean, fur slick with rain, circling the clearing with hunger sharpened by cold seasons. The soldier's breath caught, but the horse snorted unflinching, muscles tense yet steady, guardian against the circle. Moonlight struck the wolves' coats, revealing not just hunger but hesitation, as if they too sensed the change within. The soldier steadied his stance, whispering, "We are not prey," his voice trembling but anchored in newfound courage. The wolves halted, ears flat, uncertain, their instincts clashing with the aura radiating from man and beast alike. One stepped forward, teeth bared, growl low and guttural, but its eyes flickered with something close to reverence. The horse stamped the ground once, hooves striking sparks, and the wolves recoiled, startled by the display of fire. The forest pulsed with silence, heavy, waiting as if testing whether the covenant forged in the cabin could endure. The soldier lowered his rifle slowly, a gesture not of weakness, but of trust, daring to meet the wild without steel. His heart thundered, every instinct screaming fight, yet a deeper voice within urged surrender to unity, not blood. The wolves stilled, eyes locked on him, their breathing heavy, their bodies caught between attack and retreat. The horse stepped closer, positioning itself between soldier and pack, its steady breath carrying calm like a shield. And then, one by one, the wolves lowered their heads, not defeated but yielding, as if bowing to an unseen command. The soldier blinked through rain and moonlight, stunned, for never had he seen wild predators bow in solemn unity. Their eyes no longer gleamed with hunger, but with a strange recognition, as if he now carried the mark of eternity. The horse exhaled deeply, steam curling from its nostrils, each breath resonating like sacred drums in the clearing. The wolves' bodies relaxed, growls fading into silence, their forms no longer threats but shadows woven into the night. The soldier lowered his rifle completely, its weight no longer necessary, for he realized his true weapon was faith. The pack circled once more, not in menace but ritual, sealing the moment with a rhythm older than kingdoms of men. Their paws struck mud in cadence, echoing like heartbeat drums, a hymn of wild acceptance offered without words. The soldier placed a hand upon the horse's neck, feeling strength flow into him, steady as rivers that never cease. He whispered, "We are chosen." And though the forest gave no reply, the wolves' stillness confirmed the unspoken vow. One wolf stepped closer, fur slick with rain, and pressed its muzzle to the ground, a gesture of reverence and peace. The soldier's throat tightened, tears burning hot, for he had been cursed as destroyer, yet now was hailed as guardian. The horse lowered its head as well, ears forward, unafraid, acknowledging the pack not as rivals, but as kin reborn. In that circle of mud, rain, and moonlight, man, beast, and predator became one, bound by a covenant of survival. The wolves lifted their heads in unison, releasing a howl so pure that it carved the night sky into trembling stars. The soldier closed his eyes, the sound piercing him, filling every hollow with fire until despair had no place left. The forest shook, not in fear but in resonance, branches swaying like choirs, earth humming like a living cathedral. He felt the vision of the cabin extend outward, no longer trapped within walls but flooding the wilderness entire. The wolves' song rose higher, blending with thunder, echoing across valleys, summoning spirits buried deep in soil. The soldier stood taller, not as survivor but as vessel, carrying within him the light entrusted by generations past. Rain streamed down his face, mingling with tears, baptizing him in nature's own sacrament of rebirth and belonging. The wolves quieted, eyes burning one last time, then slipped back into trees, vanishing like whispers into silence. Only paw prints remained, glowing faintly as if etched in starlight, marking their acceptance before fading into earth. The soldier exhaled, chest trembling, and knew he had crossed a threshold from which he could never return unchanged. The horse nudged him gently forward toward the mist, as if reminding him that revelation always demands movement. He stepped, boots sinking in mud, but this time he felt carried as though the forest itself bore him toward destiny. The storm above softened, clouds parting to reveal a sky alive with stars, brighter than any he had ever seen. He felt small beneath their brilliance, yet not insignificant, but chosen to weave his own light into their endless fire. The path ahead glowed faintly, carved by mist, guiding them deeper into mystery, promising trials yet unfinished. He turned once more to the cabin, now silent, but its windows flickered faintly, as if winking farewell to its child. And with the horse at his side, he marched onward, bearing truth, carrying hope, and bound forever to the forest's will. The soldier and his horse moved through the glowing mist, heart steady, yet both knew destiny never rests without cost. The forest no longer opposed them, but beyond its borders, human shadows stirred, bearing greed sharper than claws. He heard voices carried by the wind, not wolves, not spirits, but men, rough, angry, speaking in tones of conquest. Lanterns flickered ahead, orange fire cutting through fog, revealing figures armed with rifles, axes, and hardened eyes. These were hunters of the wild, scavengers of sacred ground, men who sought power not for truth but for dominion. The soldier's chest tightened, for he recognized them, not in face, but in heart, the same kind he once fought beside. Their boots trampled earth without reverence, their laughter cruel, blind to the sacred harmony newly woven tonight. One lifted his lantern high, spotting movement, shouting, "There!" And rifles rose, steel glinting, hungry in moonlight. The soldier froze, torn between silence and defiance, but the horse pawed the ground, eyes blazing with defiant fire. He whispered, "Not again," knowing he could not let war repeat itself here, not after all he had just been given. The hunters advanced, a pack of men more dangerous than wolves, for their hunger was not survival but domination. They had come for the cabin, for the chest, unaware or uncaring that its truth was not theirs to claim or corrupt. The soldier stepped forward, rifle slung low, but his posture was no longer of prey. It was of guardian, chosen and sure. "This ground is not yours," he shouted, voice echoing through fog, words carrying power not born of man but eternity. The hunters sneered, mocking, rifles cocking, laughter sharp as knives, men who bowed to greed and not to reverence. The horse reared, hooves striking sparks, forcing the men to falter, unease flickering even in their hardened faces. One cursed loudly, firing into the air, the shot echoing like a scar across the night, daring nature to respond. The forest stirred, branches swaying violently, as if outraged by the desecration of its sacred silence and harmony. The soldier raised his hand, not to strike, but to command, feeling energy surge through him like rivers of fire. His voice deepened, carrying weight beyond his own. "Leave this place or face the judgment of the forest itself." The men laughed again, but unease spread, their leader glaring, unsure why shadows now seemed to move against them. The horse stepped closer to the soldier, eyes burning, as if lending its spirit to magnify the authority of his words. Mist thickened, curling around the hunters' boots, their lantern light dimming, swallowed as though by unseen hands. One man stumbled, swearing, pointing into fog, claiming he saw eyes watching, hundreds, glowing, circling silently. Panic rippled through the group, discipline cracking, for men who feared nothing now faced what they could not name. The soldier did not advance, he only stood, but the ground beneath him pulsed faintly, glowing like embers of truth. The hunters hesitated, but their leader growled, spitting, "Superstition," and raised his rifle toward the soldier's chest. Time froze, every heartbeat stretched, the soldier staring into steel barrels, yet unwilling to step back or surrender. The horse neighed sharply, thunderous, shaking the fog, its cry echoing as though every wolf had joined the call. The men trembled, rifles wavering, their resolve cracking against something far greater than bullets or bravado. The soldier's breath was calm, though rifles glared before him, for within his chest burned a fire no bullet could kill. He lifted his hand slowly, palm open, and the mist swirled upward, wrapping him like a cloak woven from eternity. The hunters stepped back instinctively, fear cracking their bravado, for they saw not a man, but a figure reborn in light. The horse stamped the ground, hooves igniting sparks that danced like fireflies, symbols of the covenant made tonight. "This land breathes," the soldier said, voice booming with unseen force, "and it rejects those who come to defile." The forest roared in answer, trees bending violently, roots tearing from soil, thunder rolling across the trembling earth. Wolves emerged once more, eyes glowing, encircling the hunters not as beasts of prey but guardians of sacred balance. The men shouted, rifles swinging wildly, but none dared fire, for every shadow now seemed ready to strike them down. Their leader cursed, rage warring with fear, and pulled his trigger, but the shot dissolved into mist before it struck. Gasps erupted, disbelief freezing their blood, for steel had no dominion here, not against forces older than mankind. The soldier's voice grew stronger, layered with countless echoes as if the ancestors themselves spoke through him. "You are intruders," he declared, eyes blazing. "This truth is not yours. It belongs to the earth, to eternity itself." The horse neighed again, rearing tall, its silhouette burning against stormlight, a living statue of defiance and will. The wolves howled in unison, sound splitting the heavens, carrying judgment across valleys, rivers, and distant peaks. The hunters stumbled backward, fear overwhelming greed, their leader's fury collapsing beneath the weight of awe. One dropped his rifle, then another, until steel clattered like broken chains against the mud of the sacred ground. The soldier advanced a step, not with violence but authority, each movement pressed by the strength of destiny itself. Mist curled tighter, forcing the men back, while unseen eyes glittered from the darkness, watching, guarding, warning. The forest itself seemed to breathe with him, pulsing light through branches, weaving a tapestry of resistance divine. The leader shouted in desperation, "Retreat!" his voice breaking, fear flooding his words where arrogance once ruled. The hunters fled into the fog, their lanterns vanishing, cries scattering, swallowed quickly by the endless wilderness. Silence fell heavy, not empty but victorious, the clearing humming with the song of nature reclaimed from greed. The wolves vanished too, fading into trees, their duty fulfilled, leaving only their blessing imprinted in the soil. The soldier exhaled, shoulders trembling, but his spirit soared, for he had defended not only himself, but sacred truth. The horse pressed its muzzle to his hand, a quiet gesture of pride, as if acknowledging the bond sealed in fire. He looked to the cabin, glowing faintly, knowing it had witnessed the battle and granted him strength to endure. The storm above softened, moonlight spilling gently, no longer cruel but tender, a benediction for chosen guardians. The soldier whispered, "It is done," though deep within he knew destiny's trials had only just begun beyond this night. Yet for the first time in years, hope surged in his chest, not borrowed from war but born of unity with the wild. And together with the horse, he stepped deeper into the forest, no longer hunted, but walking as its chosen protector. The forest lay silent after the hunters fled, but it was not emptiness. It was the deep silence of reverent approval. The soldier felt the weight of eyes unseen, spirits and ancestors lingering, blessing his defiance and his survival. He touched the cabin door once more, but it no longer called him inward. Its gift had already been sealed in his soul. The horse nickered softly, urging him forward, as though destiny had shifted from a single place to the open path. The soldier whispered, "It is not mine alone," realizing the truth was not a treasure to keep, but a torch to carry. Moonlight fell upon him like a crown, pale silver framing his face, revealing not a warrior, but a chosen guardian. Every breath carried new gravity, every step a vow to defend not only himself, but the fragile balance of the world. The forest seemed to lean closer with every stride, whispering guidance, weaving its rhythm into his awakened spirit. He no longer walked as prey or predator. He walked as one with the earth, a thread tied into the loom of eternity. The horse's hooves struck ground in steady cadence, echoing like drums that carried their promise into the horizon. Yet in the quiet triumph, he felt a deeper truth stir. Revelation was not an ending, but a burden waiting to unfold. The chest's visions haunted him still, not with fear, but with urgency, demanding action beyond the forest's border. He remembered the faces of his fallen brothers, each whispering the same unspoken command: protect what is sacred. The weight pressed into his heart, heavier than any rifle, but it was the kind of weight that forges destiny itself. His scars itched faintly, glowing faintly under moonlight, reminders not of pain endured, but of lessons carved eternal. He turned to the horse, asking softly, "Will you follow further?" And its steady gaze answered without hesitation. Together they moved deeper into mist, each step drawing them from wilderness into a world hungry for forgotten truths. The soldier knew men would come again, greed unbroken, but he carried within him now a fire they could not smother. He whispered to the wind, "If I must stand alone, then I will stand until the forest itself falls into silence." The branches above stirred, as if in agreement, leaves rustling like applause from spirits who had waited centuries. A path opened faintly ahead, glowing not from lanterns or stars, but from the lingering light of the cabin's gift. The soldier felt his heart align with the rhythm of the earth, each beat a covenant, each step a vow renewed. Yet with every pace, he sensed the burden grow heavier, for truth demanded sacrifice beyond anything he had known. The horse brushed against his shoulder, steady and firm, as if reminding him that no burden is carried by one alone. He breathed deep, the forest's air filling his lungs like sacred fire, sealing his transformation into something greater. His eyes burned with tears he did not hide, for they were not weakness, but proof that he still carried a human heart. The horizon glowed faintly, dawn pressing against night, as though even time itself honored the covenant now sealed. He whispered, "The world must know," though he did not yet understand how, only that silence was no longer possible. The wolves' distant howls rose again, not as warning but as farewell, a reminder that guardianship is never solitary. And with each howl, his purpose deepened, binding his fate to something larger than survival, larger even than life. The soldier's breath deepened, each inhale not merely air, but the weight of centuries pressing into his fragile chest. His eyes traced the horizon where dawn stirred, and he knew the light demanded he step beyond this forest sanctuary. The horse walked close, flank brushing his arm, a steady rhythm reminding him that even chosen men need companions. The ground beneath them pulsed faintly, glowing veins of earth carrying the message outward, farther than his reach. He realized the truth was alive, restless, unwilling to remain confined to cabins, chests, or whispered legends. His soul burned with clarity. This was no gift to hoard, but a call to ignite a flame in hearts long grown dark. Yet fear coiled within him, for he knew the greed of men, their hunger to twist truth into chains for their power. He whispered, "They will come again," voice breaking, but the horse answered with a soft snort, fierce and unshaken. He saw in its eyes the reflection of his own courage, multiplied, reminding him that guardianship is a shared burden. The forest receded slowly, trees thinning, mist unraveling, revealing distant valleys where villages still breathed. The soldier felt torn, his heart bound to the silence of the wild, yet pulled by the cries of a world drowning in lies. He knew revelation demanded risk, and to protect sacred truth was to confront the corruption festering among men. His boots struck harder ground, stones crunching beneath, each step sounding less like wandering and more like march. Wolves howled once more, their echoes stretching like banners, blessing his passage into the realm beyond the trees. He paused, turning back, eyes on the cabin one last time, its silhouette fading, yet its light etched forever in him. He whispered a vow into the wind, "I will not fail you," knowing the forest and its spirits would hold him to it. The horse lifted its head proudly, mane whipping in dawn's first light, as though crowned by the covenant itself. Together they walked toward the rising sun, each stride no longer retreat, but advance into the heart of destiny. The soldier imagined the faces of men who would resist him, kings, hunters, generals, each blind to sacred balance. Yet instead of despair, he felt purpose surge, for he knew truth is not tested in silence, but in conflict against lies. His scars, once marks of shame, now glowed faintly, not reminders of defeat, but maps guiding him to his higher calling. The air grew warmer, birds stirring in branches, their songs weaving with his heartbeat, sealing him as nature's herald. He whispered again, "The world must know." And this time it was not a plea, but a command etched into destiny. The horse quickened its pace, hooves striking sparks from stone, carrying him onward like a steed of fire and promise. Ahead, smoke rose faintly from distant chimneys, the first signs of men, the first test of his burden beyond the wild. He slowed, heart trembling, for though he had faced beasts and hunters, this was the battlefield that frightened him most. The horse nudged him firmly, grounding his spirit, reminding him that fear must bend to the courage carved within. He inhaled deeply, letting dawn's light fill him, and exhaled as if surrendering every doubt to the hands of fate. Together they descended into the valley, no longer wanderers but messengers of a truth that could not be silenced. And as the sun broke fully across the horizon, its rays crowned them both, sealing their march into history eternal. The valley opened wide before him, dotted with cottages and smoke, where human voices rose like fragile echoes of life. The soldier slowed his steps, heart heavy, for he carried light born of eternity into streets built on greed and fear. The horses' hooves rang against cobblestones as they entered, villagers pausing, their eyes narrowing at the stranger. Children whispered, pointing at his scars, while elders frowned, sensing something unfamiliar radiating from his presence. He kept his gaze steady, though inside tremors rattled, for here no wolf bowed and no forest sang. Only suspicion lived. A merchant sneered, muttering, "Another broken soldier," dismissing him with the same contempt he held for beggars. The soldier bit his tongue, for anger begged to rise, but he knew fury would only bury the truth he carried within. The horse stepped closer to him, eyes burning, reminding him that silence could be strength if wielded with patience. He whispered softly, "We will show them," though doubt gnawed, wondering if men could see light not forged in coin. A preacher emerged from the crowd, robes flowing, his voice booming as he asked, "What God do you claim, soldier?" The soldier froze, for this was the test, truth clothed in light, facing the corruption of men drunk on their own power. He raised his voice, steady, echoing, "I claim no god of greed, no lord of war, only the truth the earth itself spoke." Gasps rippled, villagers muttering, some crossing themselves, others scoffing, blind to revelation shining before them. The preacher sneered, raising his staff, declaring, "Blasphemy! The forest deceives the weak with false visions." The soldier's chest burned, but he did not falter, for he felt the chorus of voices behind him, whispering, "Stand firm." The horse reared suddenly, hooves flashing, its cry splitting the square, silencing the crowd with primal authority. For a heartbeat, the villagers saw it, not beast, not burden, but guardian, crowned with fire and draped in destiny. The preacher staggered, mask cracking, fear flickering in eyes that once gleamed only with control and arrogance. "You bring danger," he shouted, but his voice quivered, for the crowd began to see weakness where power once stood. The soldier stepped forward, every scar glowing faintly, his presence larger than flesh, carrying the weight of eternity. "Danger comes," he said, "not from truth, but from those who twist it into chains for their greed and dominion." His words rang like bells, shaking the silence, planting doubt in hearts long bound to sermons of fear and control. A child broke from the crowd, approaching him, eyes wide with wonder, whispering, "You shine like the stories." The soldier knelt, smiling softly. "No, child, I only carry what belongs to all of us, the truth the forest gave." Murmurs rose, villagers torn between reverence and fear, the square trembling on the edge of awakening or riot. The preacher's face darkened, desperation twisting his words as he cried, "This man brings ruin, cast him out." Yet his voice cracked under the weight of doubt, for light clung to the soldier's form, undeniable, unshakable, pure. The horse neighed again, striking stone, each echo reverberating like a gavel sealing judgment against corruption. The soldier stood tall, eyes sweeping the crowd, and said, I come not as enemy, but as witness to a greater truth." The air thickened, silence descending heavy, for the village now stood at a crossroads between fear and revelation. The preacher lifted his staff high, voice shrill with desperation, declaring the soldier a heretic cursed by the wild. His words struck some villagers like chains, fear rising, while others felt those chains loosen for the very first time. The soldier did not retreat. Instead, he stepped forward into the circle of lantern light, scars glowing with power. "I am no curse," he thundered. "I am proof that the earth still speaks, and it longs for us to listen before it dies." The preacher's face twisted, rage boiling, for he saw authority slipping like sand through fingers clenched too tightly. "Lies!" he spat, eyes darting nervously, for the horse's fiery gaze burned into him as though judging his every word. The villagers murmured louder, torn between loyalty to fear and the pull of a truth that resonated deep within. The soldier raised his hand, not in violence but in blessing, and the mist swirled gently around the square like incense. A glow settled on the villagers' faces, illuminating doubts, revealing that within them still flickered forgotten wonder. A woman stepped forward, tears shining, whispering, "I saw my husband in your light. He told me to trust you." Gasps spread through the crowd, cracks widening in the preacher's control as his authority trembled on unsteady legs. He slammed his staff on stone, sparks flying, screaming, "You are deceived by trickery, by beasts and broken men." The horse reared again, its cry echoing like a trumpet, silencing jeers, shaking lantern flames until shadows fled. In that moment the villagers saw it clearly. The beast was not servant but ally, a guardian chosen by the sacred. The soldier's voice softened but carried weight. "Do not fear me. Fear only those who tell you light is darkness." His words cut deeper than steel, unraveling lies, forcing the people to look inward, to question chains of obedience. A farmer dropped his pitchfork, bowing his head, muttering, "We've been blind too long, listening to the wrong fire." Anger flashed in the preacher's eyes, but it was hollow, for the crowd's hearts no longer beat in rhythm with his. "You will destroy us," he cried, but his voice shook, betraying that he no longer believed even in his own command. The soldier met his gaze calmly. "No, it is greed that destroys. I only bring what was given, nothing more, nothing less." The villagers shifted, some weeping, some silent, but all caught in the gravity of truth standing in flesh before them. The preacher stumbled backward, staff lowering as shadows seemed to peel from him, exposing the rot beneath his words. The crowd gasped as lanterns dimmed, the mist thickening once more, as though the forest itself had entered the square. Wolves' howls echoed faintly from the hills, not near, not threatening, but reminding all of the covenant of balance. The preacher fell to his knees, not in reverence, but defeat, his voice breaking, "You will turn them against me." The soldier answered with steady calm, "I turn them toward truth, nothing else. The choice was never mine to make." Silence followed, heavy, until a child's laughter broke it, pure and bright, piercing fear with the power of innocence. The villagers turned, eyes softening, for in that laughter they heard freedom, fragile but enough to light rebellion. The soldier closed his eyes briefly, whispering thanks, for he knew truth had found a foothold, even among the broken. And as the square shifted from fear to hope, he realized his burden had only grown heavier, but no longer alone. Dawn spilled across the village square, painting every face in gold, as though heaven itself had descended to bear witness. The soldier stood tall, scars glowing faintly, not as wounds of war, but as sacred inscriptions carved into living flesh. The horse breathed beside him, steady and strong, its presence radiant, a living monument to the covenant of balance. Villagers gazed in awe, torn between reverence and disbelief, their fear dissolving into wonder before their very eyes. The preacher knelt defeated, his staff fallen, voice broken, for the chains of fear he forged had finally shattered apart. The soldier's voice rose, calm yet unyielding. "I am not your master, I am not your enemy. I am only a witness of truth." His words echoed like bells across the valley, carried by wind, striking deep into hearts long deafened by oppression. A child stepped forward, clutching his hand, whispering, "Tell us more." And in that moment, hope was born in flesh. The soldier's chest trembled, for he knew this was his trial's purpose, not conquest, but awakening what lay forgotten. He turned to the crowd, eyes burning. The forest speaks not with threats but with memory. Its voice lives in us all. The villagers listened, silence heavy, broken only by the heartbeat rhythm of the horse's hooves upon the stone. He raised his arms, not in command but in offering. The earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth. Tears streamed down faces in the crowd, some falling to their knees, others clutching hands as faith began to stir. The preacher looked up, eyes hollow, whispering, "I was wrong." But his words were drowned by the rising murmur of hope. The soldier's heart ached, for he knew men often clung to greed, yet he saw now a seed planted that could not die. The horse lifted its head proudly, mane blazing in dawn's light, as though crowned by the very sky itself in blessing. "Guard the balance," the soldier cried, "for if we forget, darkness returns, and no man or beast will survive its hunger." His voice cracked, not with weakness but with the weight of carrying a truth too vast for a single soul to contain. Yet the crowd heard not frailty, but fire, and they answered with shouts, their fear melting into a chorus of resolve. The square transformed into sacred ground, not by miracle alone, but by the courage of one man daring to stand. Wolves howled faintly on the hills, their voices weaving into the villagers' cries, sealing the covenant across species. The soldier pressed his forehead to the horses, whispering, "We did not come for glory, but for guardianship eternal." The horse exhaled, steady, a silent vow of unity, as though beast and man had fused into a single guardian spirit. He lowered his gaze to the villagers, softer now. "I will walk with you, but this truth belongs to all, not just me." Murmurs spread like wildfire, hope igniting where despair once lived, and eyes once blind now sparkled with possibility. A farmer raised his fist high, shouting, "We will protect it!" and voices joined, echoing like thunder across rooftops. The soldier's lips trembled with a smile, for he saw not followers but equals, each one carrying the fire of truth. The preacher wept openly, stripped of power yet somehow freed, for even he could no longer deny the light unveiled. The soldier turned to the rising sun, whispering, "The burden is shared now," and the earth itself seemed to exhale. And as the village awoke to destiny, the soldier realized his journey was not an ending, but the birth of a legacy. The soldier inhaled deeply, dawn filling his lungs, and he knew that every step ahead would echo far beyond himself. The villagers gathered closer, not to worship but to share, each face carrying the fragile spark of awakening within. He saw in their eyes the reflection of his own journey, the broken soldier reborn into a vessel of truth eternal. The horse stood unmoving, a statue of loyalty, its breath rising like incense as if blessing the covenant made here. The soldier whispered softly, "I am not chosen alone," and the villagers nodded, understanding that truth was shared. Children laughed, their voices carrying higher than fear, and for the first time the square sang with innocence reborn. The wolves howled again from distant ridges, their chorus entwined with human voices, uniting wild and flesh as one. Tears streamed down weathered cheeks, not of grief but of release, as chains of silence broke beneath the weight of light. The preacher lay prostrate, staff fallen, yet in his brokenness even he began to see freedom in surrender to truth. The soldier raised his voice once more. "Guard what you have felt tonight, for the world will test it with fire." His words sank like roots into soil, deeper than memory, planting conviction that no storm could tear away again. The horse pawed the earth, sparks flying, as though sealing the promise with the strength of the wild itself. The villagers responded not with fear, but with cries of unity, voices blending into a single hymn of defiance and hope. The soldier felt his heart lighten, for though the burden remained, it was no longer his alone to bear in silence. He gazed toward the horizon where the sun blazed high, painting the valley gold, a path carved in light awaiting them. The horse nudged his shoulder gently, reminding him that destiny does not pause. It walks on, step after sacred step. He turned once more to the cabin's memory, whispering, "Thank you," though he knew its spirit would forever walk with him. The wolves' howls faded, The mist receded, and the forest watched from afar, satisfied that balance had been restored. The soldier lifted his arms wide, scars shining, proclaiming silently that no darkness could undo what had been revealed. The villagers embraced one another, strangers united, their community reborn by the echo of a soldier's defiance. The preacher wept openly, face in hands, perhaps freed at last from the chains of lies he once wielded as weapons. The soldier mounted no throne, claimed no crown, but walked among them as equal, his scars proof of shared humanity. The horse followed, steady, a reminder that guardianship is not conquest, but harmony between man and the eternal wild. Together they moved through the village, leaving behind not victory but a flame lit in hearts impossible to extinguish. Children ran beside them, their laughter carrying higher than bells, pure and untouched, echoing the dawn's promise. The soldier smiled faintly, whispering, "This is how wars end, not with steel, but with the birth of light in hearts." The horse neighed, proud and fierce, and the sound rang like a trumpet announcing not an end, but a beginning eternal. As they reached the edge of the square, the villagers' cheers rose, carrying hope like banners unfurled against the sky. The soldier turned one last time, gaze sweeping faces alight with new fire, and whispered, "Guard it, for it is yours." And with the horse at his side, he walked toward the horizon, leaving behind not legend but a living legacy of light.